I now call the April 29, 2021 Board of Commissioners work session to order. I'm going to call on our Finance Director, Alicia Searcy, to present our financial update for the month ending March of 2021.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Hello.
Well, we ended up March in another good month here. As we look at our revenues, we've collected 99.84% of our property tax. Our budgeted property tax. We've collected 103.84% of our motor vehicle tax, 119% of our intangible tax, 94.52% of our sales tax. Our total taxes, we've collected 98.51. Building permits, we're already above budget there. We're at 112.9%. On our fine fees and forfeitures, we're at 92.5%. Our state court fines are at 106.9%. And our total revenue collected is at 95.4%. That's an increase of 6.8% over last year. We're 75% through the year, and our expenses are running at about 71.28% of our budget. So that really puts us in a good position. Our cash, our general fund cash ended in March at $32,969,555, which is about $8 million ahead of where we were last year. And that's about $7.8 million increase in our fund balance. So, you know, this year is ending up good. A lot of that's due to the fact that we were very conservative in our budgeting. Due to COVID, we weren't real sure what would happen. We kind of expected a downturn in motor vehicle tax and sales tax. Neither one of those projections have happened. They've both continued to be very strong. So thanks to everyone out there who's buying new cars and new things and paying sales tax. Helps us as a county. There were a couple of things that I wanted to mention that I normally don't talk about during the financial session. But during the last month, we've had bond ratings from S&P and from Moody's, and that's related to the bonds that we're looking at issuing in relation to the SPLOST that was passed back in March. We have received very good ratings from both companies. We did not, there was not a change in our rating, but we continued. S&P rated us at AA, stable, and Moody's rated us at AA2, which is the same rating that we got from them in the past. I think that a copy of both of those reports are included in your information that you have at your desk there. And one thing I wanted to bring up about Moody's, some things that they just reported, their summary was that we were benefiting from a growing tax base. We had a stable financial position supported by conservative budgeting practices. The debt position is slightly elevated. A majority of the debt issued is through the hospital authority, which are the Tanner bonds that we guaranteed. That was not necessarily a negative impact on our rating, just something that they took into consideration. Our credit strengths are that we have the growing tax base, we're stable financially, and net of self-supporting hospital authority debt, we have a very low long-term liabilities. So they saw all of that as positives. The challenges that they saw was that we had below average residential income and wealth metrics, and our reserves were below medians of similar related counties. So we have continued to build our reserves. They took note of that. They saw that as a very positive, but in their opinion, we could even have a better reserve. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Factors that could lead to an upgrade. So essentially, they've told us that AA is about as good as we can get unless we can change a couple of things. And one is the tax base expansion and strength of income and wealth levels within the county. And the other one is sustained improvement in reserves and cash, which I think the second one we will definitely do. The first one we probably need to strategize about. And then factors that could lead to a downgrade are reductions in the tax base or weakened income or wealth levels, trend of structural imbalance leading to narrow reserves, declining coverage of the hospital authority debt by Tanner. But I don't see that that's going to happen. I think Tanner's very strong financially, and they report that information to us on a regular basis. So that concludes my report unless there's any questions.
As you stated, we look very healthy again for last month's numbers that are coming in. On the TVAT tax, it does concern me moving forward, nothing in the moment, but when you look at the lots, they're empty, and you had talked about that before, how they're not, I think there was, I don't know if it was due to COVID or if they were basing that off of COVID, but the computer chips and so forth, it will be interesting to see how they're able to resupply those lots or whatever. So think about that in the future, but that's just a comment. As far as what you were talking about with the bonding, that was very good information. One thing that I wonder, and if we should speak with ACCG, so you were talking about the reserves. Typically, we have been at the top of the threshold of what ACCG recommends. They give a broad spectrum of 16 to 25%. I don't remember the exact numbers, but we've been holding very close to the very top of that.
We have.
So if that bonding company is considering only one source of what maybe some other counties are sitting at, I mean, we've talked before about it's a unique balance, right? We want to have a good, healthy reserve, but we can't have so much that the constituents think that we're hoarding too much money and therefore should lower the amount that we're taking in. And that's certainly not the case, but that's the balance you try to strike. So it would be interesting to check in to see exactly how they're computing or calculating that when I feel like we are at the top of the threshold of what ACCG is recommending.
Well, what they're looking at it from a national level. So they're comparing us across all 50 states, whereas ACCG is looking at the state only. So I don't know if there's other organizations. NACO could help us with that, since they're a national organization. And I think we should ask ACCG and find out if they have a calculation that differs from other state organizations across the country.
Right.
So,
I gave them, I asked you to come to the floor because we're recording them. No, I wondered at what point you were going to add
yeah,
to it.
One thing I was just going to add on that too, when they say similarly rated credits, you guys are above an average credit. AA, AA2 is a excellent credit rating. So they're comparing you against a higher than average benchmark, if that makes sense. So I don't think you have a low fund balance from typical standards. It's just when you're at a higher bar, you have better peers that they're comparing to get. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to make the conversation complicated. I'm just simply saying, if the governing alliance that we're trying to, understand if we're running as we should, and we are, and we're at the top tier of that threshold, but we're bonding out money, and that's one of the things that they're comparing us somewhere else, that becomes a conflict that we need to see if there's anything we can do with that. So.
Right.
So Moody's didn't give any information quantifying that, like raise it by 4.2% or something. I mean, there's nothing quantifying it to their comment.
I could probably, they usually have public data. It'll be interesting to see. I'll see what I can get from them.
Okay, so he's saying Gabe is saying that we'll look at some of the public data that's offered by Moody's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd be curious to see too.
Any other questions for Alicia concerning the March financials? Okay, seeing and hearing none. We're going to go ahead and move right into the review and discussion of items for our meeting next Tuesday. As you all can see, we have a very lengthy agenda, and trying to be respectful to the public and the staff, I'd like to try and place some items that we feel comfortable with this afternoon on a consent agenda as we've done before. So after each item, I will ask you if you're okay with putting it on a consent agenda. You also have a cheat sheet right next to you because a couple items cannot be on a consent agenda. So the first thing I'm going to do is call on County Attorney Stacey Blackman now. She's going to present item 10.1, a consideration of the Carroll County SPLOST 2021 bond resolution, along with 10.2, a consideration of a GF1 resolution for the 2021 construction fund. And there again, 10.1 cannot be on a consent agenda, but 10.2 can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, if I might invite Gabe Agan with Raymond James, our investment banker here, to talk about the bond financing that's coming up. So he can go over the numbers first, and then I'll go over the resolution.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Stacy. Good to be here this afternoon, and I'll make this fairly quick because I know there's a lot on the agenda. And Tuesday will be the big day because we'll actually have some final real numbers to talk with you about. So that's always an exciting part of this process. There's a lot of work that goes into one of these. Alicia has spent a ton of time getting the disclosure together, talking with the rating agencies to get to this spot. So I feel like this pricing week, this is kind of what all the work's kind of leading up to. So Monday and Tuesday will be exciting days to get our final rate set on these bonds. So what this is basically just the general obligation sales tax bonds that were approved by voters March 16th with the renewal of the sales tax. So I'll just go through these, a couple of interesting things. One thing that I think is true everywhere, this has been the most difficult year to project anything I've ever seen. If you had asked me a year ago where sales tax numbers would be, I would say we're probably going to have a 10% drop. When everything closed, it's just been shocking what we've seen, especially here locally. Like, the numbers have been extraordinary, and both the rating agencies mentioned that, but this is just kind of historical where you've been on the local option. And the current sales tax, you actually Sure. Sorry about that. You actually just got your last check of the current sales tax, the one that ended in March levy, April check. So you collected just over 109, almost 109, 500,000 under that sales tax, and your 62.39 was $68.3 million there. So we did exceed the estimated amount, 96 million over the term of that. This is just old stuff I put in here. The last bond issue, just your average rate, which we thought was very low at the time, was 1.64. The all-inclusive cost was 1.89, so below 2%. Wow, pretty good deal. But what we've seen, they're even lower rates, so we'll get to that here shortly. But one thing that we always do to project these sales tax numbers is to look at your most recent 12 months of collections. And we always consider just no growth kind of a good conservative. We'd never suggest anybody borrow over a 0% growth, which clearly you didn't here. We used $119 million in estimated number, back fall, I guess, when we had to put it. The way the sales tax goes, it goes the full 6 years anyway, so it's just an estimate. It's not going to end early. So we'd probably use a little bit higher number now because things have been going so well. At 0% growth, you're going to collect, about $31.5 million. So you've been doing great with collections here recently. Could you give me that number again? 31,446,000, right there, the one that's highlighted in yellow. Right
31?
there. Yes, sir.
Wait, you got the handout too.
131.
Steve, you have the handout.
131 million.
Yeah.
Now, that's the countywide.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want you to clarify.
Yeah,
that is not
that's not Carroll
government.
County, so that goes to the cities.
Yes.
and all the other entity, through the intergovernmental agreement. So Carroll County's split of that is 61.9257% to carry it out to the fourth decimal spot there. Let's just jump right into the bond stuff. Okay, so this rate will be set Tuesday, but as of right now, the short part of the market is incredibly low. These are fixed interest rates, but as you see here, there's 6 maturities sold right here that range from 0.17 to 0.74% on the yields there. Bonds typically sell at a premium to where, investors pay more than the par amount, because that's what's typically demanded by investors. It's very common in the bond world. But the important number here is, this could change 10 basis points between now, but it probably won't that much between now and Tuesday. But right now you're looking sub 1% money, all inclusive with all the, cost of doing one of these. So about 0.83% is the estimated all-inclusive cost to borrow here. So at closing, I mentioned that bond premium. You actually get a little bit more than the $40 million in amount because the bond premium, so it's about $45.7 million. This may change some depending on what's more in demand from investors. And then Carroll County gets 90%, and Villa Rica is also participating, so they're going to get 10%, but they're also going to pay 10% of the bond payments. So that's how that's going to work. Okay, this just shows the debt service schedule on the bonds right here. Of course, estimates now, so Tuesday these will be final numbers when I present the price and results. Okay, now this sheet's important. This shows can you pay it back without levying property tax or using other sources of funds. These are general obligation funds, so if sales tax isn't enough, you would have to levy a property tax. But this is a very conservative borrowing plan, so 0% is like what I say I like to consider as the kind of base case for growth. So it's 0% Carroll County share based on their 61.9257 is $81.4 million basically. So less the bond payments, you got to basically about double the amount without any growth. So you have $39 million of cushion. And then Villa Rica's share is also actually a little bit more than double the sales tax versus the bond payment at 0 growth. So they have about just under $10 million for their share of sales tax, and their share of the bond debt service would be about $4.7 million. So they'd have 5.2 left. So, even if you have some pretty significant decline, if something worst case scenario happens, it's I hate to say never, but it's be very unlikely that you'd ever have to do anything besides use the sales tax money. So conservative borrowing plan. Just a couple little interest rate charts. Right now, the red's where we are. This is kind of the highs and lows since 1993. We're still in a historically all-time low environment for especially the 1 through 6 year bonds. If you go out and issue 10, 15, 20, 30 year bonds, rates are some higher, but still very low. So, and there's another rate chart. So that's really all I had. Just wanted to kind of walk through this quickly. But yeah, I think it's a good story. One thing I'll mention too about just the ratings and the history. I know the first time I worked with Carroll County on a bond financing in 2008, I think, finances were not even close to being where they are now. One of the rating agencies had a negative outlook, and you're in an A category, which is not bad, but it's been a steady climb upward. I know in the 2013 issue, you had considerably better ratings. You'd been a steady climb upward, but you actually got an upgrade from S&P to AA. So you have the same ratings. But one thing to mention too, just some of the feedback I've had talking to the rating analyst, there is some room. So I feel like we were kind of barely there, and you're solidly there now. Like it's the higher you get, the harder it is to get to the next category. That's what I'm kind of trying to say. I know the next, about the only way to get better from here is just like a higher income, more, Forsyth counties, the Gwinnett, the ones that, Cobb have the AAA ratings are really large, and typically, there's other wealth indicator, but for a county this size, you're doing fantastic. So any questions? I know there's a lot of stuff to cover, but
Can you go into a little bit of detail as far as how the process works? So obviously at the ballot box, voters understood that we were looking to bond out 40 million, not just Carroll County, but the municipalities included. So obviously, if we've got certain projects that we want to try to move forward with, we can't necessarily do all those at once. But essentially, though, we are getting approved for that entire bond amount up front. So can you explain a little bit how that process works and how it could be it could take some time down the road before we actually need to utilize those funds.
Sure,
but that
sure.
doesn't mean we don't handle things on the
Sure,
front end.
Sure. I'll cover two things, kind of the pricing process and then, the project, the timing standpoint. So next week when we get to pricing, and we talked a little bit about the calls we're going to set up. I know Alicia's been through this with Tanner, but this is the first time that she'll be, handling the pricing part of it. So we're having a pre-pricing call Monday afternoon. And we've been pre-marketing your deal for the last couple weeks. Sales folks calling people, finding accounts, and trying to tell Carroll County story here to get a lot of interest in your bonds. So 4:30 on Monday, we'll have a call, update how that's going, market update, and give some ideas where we think we're going to go market your bonds at. We may have another call the next morning if there's been any significant changes, but then we'll have an order period. So there'll be typically 2.5 hours to where anybody that we've been talking to, they have to put their order in then. And if we have more orders than we have bonds available, sometimes, we'll have 150 million orders for 40 million bonds. It's a good thing, so we'll lower the rates, and some of those people will walk away and not get bonds. And then sometimes, if we go out with a rate too low, nobody will want them, so we'll have to raise the rate a little bit. So it's supply and demand. And then sometimes if there's a few unsold, we'll just buy them, because that's what we do as an underwriters. We give you a firm deal. So at noon, Alicia will make a verbal award if she agrees with our pricing, and then Tuesday evening, we'll have the resolution to be considered, and I'll have a final deal for you with numbers that's firm, that's not going to change at that point, if that makes sense. But in terms of the timing, we're going to close on May 18th, and you'll get the money in a project fund held at a corporate trust account that'll be invested. Right now, your rate's not very good, but we're going to do the best we can, and hopefully, if we get these fixed rate bonds in, maybe they'll go up some, but we don't know for sure. But you'll spend that money, just prioritize the projects that need to be done. I know, I won't go into a lot of the project details, but basically, when you're ready to get going, you just spend that money, and there are some spend down requirements. One reason these rates are so low is that you get a tax benefit. The investors that buy these bonds don't pay income tax, federal tax, or state of Georgia tax. So the investors that we sell these to will take a lower interest rate than if they had to pay tax on them. So that helps you out. But the IRS does not like to see you overissue these bonds. So there'll be a closing document saying you expect to spend the money in 3 years, which you do. Obviously, you wouldn't be borrowing the money. And you just have to keep a separate account. But to answer your, it's just prioritize. This money's there. You spend it as quick as you need it. So if it's spent in a year, great. If it's spent, longer, it's more on the project needs, if that makes sense. So, did that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I guess, just to get your opinion, as a fiscally conservative person, I always like to, deal in cash as much as possible.
Sure.
But I guess with the current economy, the interest rates are low, as you mentioned.
Yes, sir.
So two questions. One, this is, as you mentioned, a fixed rate. Okay.
It is.
And then, as far as a forecast, it seems like we might be toward the end of the lowest rate period because of growth of what now 6.4%. I guess it was advertised as today. So there could be some type of increase in the interest rates in the future, would you think?
Well, I don't think that you're going to see lower than 0.52 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I don't predict interest rates because I'm usually wrong, but we are historically, I really do think we'll see versus normal. This is about as low of a sales tax deal as I've ever seen in terms of, the rates. So, I think the trend's higher.
Okay. And one of your charts there, a couple charts back, I guess, indicated even if we had a 5% decrease,
You're
we're
very,
okay.
very safe.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I'll mention too, I mean, you know, I'm fiscally conservative too, so I don't like to, but you got to think too in you know, when you talk about sub 1% money versus project I mean, you know, I don't want to say, you know, I mean, interest is, sometimes there's better uses of money, if that makes sense. You know, if
Yeah.
you have 3, 4, 5% project inflation, you know, 1% money is not too bad, I guess.
Right.
So, but can you afford it? That's the big thing. And as the rating agencies mentioned, you know, outside, you know, they look at it both ways. They do look at the Tanner debt, but then they also say that, man, they're doing great. This is self-supporting. So it is your debt. But when they back that out, you know, you have very low liabilities was the comment in the report. So it's certainly nothing that I have concern about.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Okay, I'll call Stacy back to actually go over the
Okay.
resolution.
okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Gabe.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
Okay. I'm headed to a soccer game.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll see
oh,
y'all
thank
on
you.
Tuesday.
Bye. Thanks. He's doing a great job along with Alicia and keeping those ratings high. We have for your perusal a 20-page bond resolution. So the heading pretty much covers it. It approves the issuance of the bonds, approximately 40 million. 4 million of that will be going to Villarica. Then approves a bond purchase agreement, which is attached, a bond, naming of the bond registrar and the paying agent, establishing a construction fund, and the custodian, that's named as Regions Bank, adopting a form of the bonds, which is in this resolution, authorizing the preparation of a tax digest annually and the levy of a tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest of the bonds in the highly unlikely event that the sales tax proceeds are not sufficient. The bonds are paid first from the sales tax, and as Gabe went over, that we're very conservative and should have the sales tax to pay the bonds. And the approval of the continuing disclosure certificate and the official statement which was the offering statement to sell the bonds and other purposes, and authorize the chairman to execute all documents. So if you
You
have
have
any,
lots of homework for reading this weekend.
yes. And let me know if you have any questions.
Now, this particular one, 10.1, cannot go on a consent. So Stacy will be back, and y'all have had time to read all the documents, and she'll go over if there's any changes as of Tuesday morning. So we'll move to 10.2, which can go on a consent.
Yes.
And Stacy, if you want to explain this one.
Right, so this is just a resolution to authorize the investment of the bond funds into the Georgia Fund 1, which is the local government investment pool, which is a very safe investment that Gabe tells me, you know, so many counties and school districts invest in this government pool. I think rates right now on investments are not high, so this is a safe investment, and we can pull the money out as needed, so a money market account. So this is a standard resolution to authorize the Georgia Fund 1 investment.
Any questions for Stacy on this particular, I don't want to use the word handout, document?
Thank you.
Are y'all okay with putting 10.2 on a consent?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let me get back to our screen. Okay.
I shook my head.
Okay, next is 10.3. And according to Section 14B of the Charter, I am notifying you all today that I'll be submitting the proposed budget that we reviewed on April the 19th, 2021 to the Times-Georgian, our legal organ. And I will be looking for feedback at our May 19th, 2021 budget work session. There will be no action on this item on Tuesday at all. It's just information only, what I will bring up to you. But I do want to read a little bit about the charter so that you understand and that the public understands. So 14B is the chairman shall serve as the budget officer for the county. The chairman shall submit to the board, not later than the regular May meeting of each year, a revenue estimate for the following year and a proposed budget governing the expenditures of all funds expected to be available to the county for the following calendar year. and shall include proposed expenditures for capital outlay and public works projects. The chairman shall submit to the commission at the time the proposed budget is submitted a report containing information relating to the financial affairs of the county, which is relevant to the establishing the annual budget. And then 14C is at the time the proposed budget is submitted to the commission, the chairman shall cause to be published in the official organ of Carroll County a copy of the proposed budget along with the public notices. We will at that time be doing notice and things. So at Tuesday night, I will be presenting the budget that we did review, and I will be looking forward to the feedback on May 19th work session, but there again, there will be no action on this one at all. But we'll go over that again on Tuesday. All right, 10.4, I'm going to call on Public Works Director Charles Pope to talk about the Magistrate Court building, the roof, and the HVAC renovations.
Thank you, Chairman, Board of Commissioners. The bid, the RFPs went out on March the 5th for advertisement. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting, was held Monday, March the 15th, 2021 at 3 p.m. at the Magistrate Court building. Bid proposals were to be turned in no later than 2 p.m. on Monday, February the 1st, 2021. We had 7 companies to turn in the bid proposals, and all their paperwork was in order. They had the choice of turn them in by, send them in by email, mail, or hand delivered. After the committee went through all the bids and the proposals, the committee recommended to go with West Georgia Resources, which was the bid for $245,200.
Now, this item I would like to put on consent, so if at all possible, if you have any questions for Charles at this time.
Mr. Pope, it looks like out of the 7 bids, 6 of the 7 had basically a $48,000 spread, which I thought was very good. So that tells me the work was very clearly spelled out in the RFP process. Looks like that worked very well. West Georgia Resources, we have utilized them before, and they've done quality work for Carroll County.
Yes, sir, they have.
Okay, and you had a committee that was put together that had some expertise and also some scoring experience to know how to go through these and score to come up with a recommendation. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have 3 on the committee that the Madam Chair formed, and then we had 2 extra people that sat in, which was Danny Yates, and then my construction and maintenance supervisor, David Spradlin. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Charles? Are you okay with putting this on consent?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so that's that. All right, Charles, just stay here for a few more minutes. We have Public Works, the asphalt spreader.
What we're asking to do is replace the asphalt spreader that we had purchased in 2009, and it's given us problems, and we spent about $10,000 on it in the last 4 months. What we're asking to do is we went out and just got quotes on 3 of the companies that make these asphalt spreaders. And you see there that the Road Tech is actually the cheapest at $377,708. The next bid was Caterpillar at $398,780, and then Vocal at $403,958. The Road Tech, if we would have went out for bids and we'd ordered it 2 weeks ago, it would have been delivered here hopefully by mid-September. And our paving season would have done been over by then. So Yancey, which is a Caterpillar, they have one in stock, could be delivered next week after the board approves it if y'all choose to. So we're recommending to buy the Caterpillar spreader for $398,780, and it will be purchased through the state bid through Sourcewell.
And I think we'd lose more than the 20,000 difference in LMIG funds and put those funds in jeopardy if we didn't take advantage of the early delivery.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah.
Because Madam Chair signs the agreement every year for our LMIG funds, and that is for the county. We're supposed to get them all done in 1 year. Due to the COVID last year, we left 12 miles, so we got 20 this year, so we started off with 32 miles. And hopefully with the new spreader, it'll run all day for us, and we can catch up on some of it. And if we went out and rented one, this spreader here would rent for $30,000 a month. So purchasing the spreader would be the right idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Pope, Sourcewell, the institution that we're going through, this is essentially a cooperative purchase, and they handle all the procurement processes with approved vendors by meeting state and local government requirements. So in essence, this is much like a state bid, but just understanding how the institution works. So we didn't just go out and get necessarily quotes on our own. This is an institution that handles that much like a state bid.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Looks like the 3 quotes had a spread of about $26,000, which looks really good to me. It's my understanding through reading the documents that we also have an extended warranty included in this price.
Yes, sir, we did. We went back and extended the warranty. They extended it at no charge, 5 years, 6,000 hours. So that is a good warranty. So hopefully we won't need it, but yes.
And this is one of those instances where I think using Sourcewell and using, in layman terms, what we're calling a state project is extremely beneficial. As you stated, if we have the downtime, we're not only getting behind significantly with our paving, but if we try to rent something, then we're putting cost into something that we're not going to really get a return on a piece of equipment that we want to have, you know, to service a long time. And you stated you have put a lot of money into the old machine.
Yes, sir.
And it keeps breaking down. And some of my conversations that I've had with you, and I want to clarify this, is there's not only the downtime, but essentially when you go out to a project and work for a day, your staff has to order so much asphalt of what they think that they can lay that day. So there's significant cost in the asphalt if the machine breaks down and you've got nowhere to put that asphalt that you pre-committed to have to purchase, because that's essentially how the operations work. So we've got that cost factor to consider as well if we don't try to move pretty quickly on this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Just for instance, Tuesday, we ordered asphalt and the machine broke down. We left 9 loads in the silo. So if we couldn't have got it going, then we'd have to took that 9 loads and just dumped it, and that would have been close to $13,000 just dumped on the ground.
I feel comfortable with the purchase. I think it's very well warranted. And I think at the end of the day, for all the reasons we've just spoken about, I think it is definitely appropriate to move forward.
And we're not doing it this way, we're not leaving out anybody local at all.
No, nobody makes it local.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And actually, we got good friends with C.W. Matthews and also Baldwin Paving. Actually, C.W. Matthews just ordered 18 of these pavers last week.
Wow, good.
And they're one of the biggest companies in the state of Georgia that does that.
All right, Charles, you said that the road tech, the earliest we could get delivery on that would be September. Is that what
Mid-September. If we'd have ordered it 2 weeks ago, mid-September.
Okay, and it's how much a month to rent one?
$30,000.
Okay.
So on a year and a half, we can pay for.
Well, that works out to a little over $500,000 if we wait and buy one in September and then pay rent on one.
That's
we're
right.
going to spend $500,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Are you okay with putting this on a consent agenda?
Yes.
All right, one more time, Charles. We now have the Ag Center, some electrical work.
This is an electrical upgrade to the Ag Center, and I think you probably remember back later last year that we had a figure to come in at about $140,000 to do the electrical upgrade out there. So we knew that wasn't going to work, so we went to Georgia Power and talked to them. They checked the voltage coming into our building, said we had plenty. So then we went back and refigured, and Davey went and talked to these 3 companies and met with them, the scope of work. So it pretty much says there what we're gonna do is add 200 amp panels with enough breakers in there to supply 56 more outlets to go back in the back where they're having a problem with the power, cutting off when they plug up a fan or whatever. But all these outlets will be on individual breakers, so if one plugs something in, then it won't interfere with the rest of the building out back. So we're gonna recommend that we would go with Buckter Electric for $36,000 and I think $800. $36,800 was the cheapest bid.
Mr. Pope, looking at these 3 quotes, it looks like a spread of about $14,000, which seems reasonable. You had stated that all 3 of these firms, based off of your professional staff, believe that all 3 of the companies could have done a reasonable job.
Yes, sir.
And you did also have a committee that was familiar with scoring and had expertise in this field that came about on the decision. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's my understanding, I know this was brought to our attention some time ago, over a year ago, about a lot of the breakers and different things that were tripping with some of the different events that we have at the Ag Center. And I know at that time, just internally, we had thought that it would be substantially in 6 digits to try to fix the problem. So it's really good to look at this, that y'all have drilled down, and it seems to be a lot cheaper fix than what we originally thought it would be.
But by going this route, I don't think we'll have no more problem in the back area.
And Paula Burke is here also out in the audience. If you have any questions for Paula concerning this. Okay, well, hearing and seeing none. Are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
Okay, thank you.
I'm now going to call on Chief Deputy Brad Robinson and Captain Shane Taylor from the Carroll County Sheriff's Department Office, to present 10.7, the Carroll County Jail, an interior barrier system renovations bid.
Good afternoon. My name's Shane Taylor. Appreciate y'all being here. As far as the bids and things of that nature, I may have to call on Mr. Goodhead to assist me with that. But what we will say is, Sheriff's Office, the jail's 20 years old. This has been on our radar for about 5 years, 2017, when we started digitalizing our reports from the jail side, is where these numbers come from. So I don't even have numbers prior to that of what cost or expenses we may have accrued during that time. But just, I've got some figures here. Overall, since 2017, these inmates, fortunately, nobody lost their life. However, between the ones we do have documented, which are 5 inmates, and then 1 officer who was viciously attacked and thrown off the 2nd level, thankfully she survived. We have spent, since 2017, $225,000 on medical bills, hospital bills in the case of the officer, as well as, I've got these figures. I think we've already presented them. Maybe y'all have them already, I don't know, that broke down these. Obviously, we've been very fortunate this date and time, but there is the real fear. We have fights between inmates and staff. But not so often with staff, thankfully. But we do average 1 to 2 inmate fights a week out there. That's there. Luckily, our numbers have been down, but the fight numbers still don't drop. They're in there for a reason. We currently have 11 waiting trial for murder in there, as well as numerous other serious violent offenders in there. And matter of time before one of them throws another one off. And at that point, as y'all know, constitutionally, not only are we required the safety and security of the public, but also the safety and security of those inmates, as well as our staff. But so potentially, the liability standpoint could be substantial. And I know we're looking at a substantial project here, but when you're looking at versus the loss of life, we got to do it. We're not the only one experiencing this that built these modular type jails. Back 20 years ago, everybody was doing it, and just about everybody that's doing it is going back and having to do what we do now. I think Mr. Goodhead could speak more about that. I don't know if y'all have any questions for me yet, but I'm here. Appreciate y'all listening. And he can explain the other part.
Captain Taylor, I'd like to say that I'm very supportive of the need of this. For the jail, I will say I do have some concerns after looking that we only had one, I guess, qualified bid that was submitted, and that has nothing to do with you or the institution, but I did want to talk to Mr. Goodhead about that just to see if maybe we could have a little bit of enlightenment on that portion.
Well, I do know we had a lot of interest. We had quite a few that come out to view and oversee the bidding, but I'll let Mr. Goodhead speak on that.
Yes, sir. So basically, we had a mandatory pre-bid because you need to walk these to see these. This is a very special knit industry when it talks a cane wall system in a jail. A cane wall system is a custom system built by one company. That one company builds a rack that basically has to be engineered and assembled, and they are welded together above the mezzanine. So you attach them to the outside. So it's a very, very special knit. Very few people do this in our industry. Those are usually vendors. We call them DEC, Detention Equipment Contractors. And they do nothing but jails. So the Sheriff's Department actually reached out to a company, Desi, I guess, what, 6 years ago, Captain? Probably 5, 6 years ago. Desi is one of the 3 that I know that does this. And I live more lives in jails than I do outside. I mean, that's what I do every day. I was in Floyd counties today. They're looking at doing the same thing. So we started building mezzanine jails, which basically we take the square feet to where he can get his 16 or 32 inmates inside of that housing unit. We do that by stacking. So basically a cell is 8'8", 16 foot, you got your mezzanines. Nobody really had this issue years ago, but as rights and things have changed in our world, officers have less officers. There's less correctional people in our jails now when it comes to correctional officers, so the one-on-one is not like it was. And so what it does, it puts our officers at risk. We do this in DOCs, period. DOCs, they are prosecuted in the supermaxes, the tunnels, the cane walls. This is done a lot in our state jails. So when I put the RFP out for you guys, we made it mandatory because we wanted to know who was coming. I personally called 3 that I know that do this every day. 2 of them were not interested. One of them was out of Poly Jail, which is out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the other one is Normand. Cornerstone showed here, they drove here from Alabama. You had Desi here. Desi can't bond. So Desi is a subcontractor. He doesn't have the ability to give a P&P bond, which is what the state law requires. So when he had his quote from years ago, it actually did not have a P&P bond. So we brought everybody in. I think you had 6 that day. Desi handed his business card to all subcontractors, general contractors that were there. I can't tell you why nobody turned in a number on bid day. Does the number surprise me? No. Is there things that we could probably look at to lessen it? Probably. Because right now it's a turnkey number. It is basically them bringing in all this steel for all 18 housing units, vertically taking it up the staircase. Very, very labor intensive. These panels, like I said, they're anywhere from 16 to 18, depends on where they're at in the jail. And they have to get them in that staircase from the outside, and they have to pull them all the way up to your 3rd floor. So you have steel escalation going on right now in the construction industry, 30 to 40%. And I'm seeing that every day in what I'm doing right now for some state work. So the number doesn't surprise me. Why they didn't bid, I can't answer that because legally I can't call them until you all give me direction. Because you all have told us to put it out on the street. We've had no communication other than quantifying the number that we have in front of us. So a lot of this will come back to you all to make a decision on which way you, the board, want to react. So,
Ms. Blackman, if the chairman allowed, or was the consensus of the board, is that something at this point that we could have Mr. Goodhead legally reach out to those firms that showed up and ask them, was there some specific reason why they didn't bid? I think one of the concerns that I have is, look at a couple of the companies' names: Detention Equipment Service Incorporated, Cornerstone Detention. So you've got 2 potential bidders that actually have the word detention in their company name, so it's not like thought they were coming to build a McDonald's. They knew they were going to a jail. So I am curious to know if there is just some red flag out there that we have not realized in the RFP process. Did they come and just realize they didn't want to deal with it? I just have concerns that it does not make sense to me.
Just be clear, Desi did bid. Desi is the vendor that you have in your quote today. They are the subcontractor. We requested that information of who was to install it, because I wanted to know who's putting the cane wall system up. Because I don't want somebody coming off the street that's never worked in a jail, that doesn't understand contraband, doesn't understand the tool inventories and all the things that happen when you walk into one of these gentlemen's facilities. It is not a place that you want people in there learning how to do something for the first time. So I was really after making sure we had the right, I've done this with people that don't know how to do it, and it's not a very good experience for any of us. So Desi did bid, but Desi can't bond. So that's the DEC. They're actually a Georgia-based company.
So why would they show up if they knew they couldn't bond?
Because they didn't know they couldn't. They didn't. I was the one at the pre-bid said you have to put up a PNP bond and you have to put up a bid bond. So what they saw was on the state register, sir, and so they showed up. Because if a GC's there, they usually give it to a contractor. That's why Balfour Beatty was in your jail. They are known for a correctional facility. Prime Construction is known as a general contractor to build jails in the state of Georgia. So it didn't surprise me other than one that showed up. So everybody else I see in my day-to-day business that I deal with when it comes to correctionals. Because I work for the Department of Juvenile Justice. I also work for the Department of DOC. I also help out Floyd County and a lot of our other surrounding areas that we do.
So if I understand,
Fire away.
this Desi, is that detention equipment service?
Yes.
Okay, so they couldn't bond, so
He went to a contractor.
he went to a contractor, Southern Standard. They could bond,
They can bond.
so Southern Standard basically bonded Desi to do the work.
That's correct.
But we still don't have any other bids except for one.
Why Norman didn't come here, Cornerstone drove here from Alabama. I have not called any of them and said, why did you not bid? You know, all I did is set the RFP out, told them what the days had to be. I answered the questions that came up, so we answered the questions, but I didn't call up everybody on bid day and say, are you gonna turn in a number? You know, if they're gonna turn it in, they're gonna turn it in. This is a very niche market to do what we do.
Where I'm at on this is, as I'll reiterate, I'm very supportive of the project in general.
I understand.
I think it's needed. I want us to move forward as quickly as we can, but I also have a fiduciary responsibility in my role of why it's sitting before us is to monitor how the money is spent. If there's information sub-information that we can get by next Tuesday that I can personally review that maybe gives some more information, and that would be if our attorney says that is legal, if there is some glaring reason, or if I had more information to absorb, or it may be as we dig further that we may think that we need to put it off and rebid it. I don't know. Or we could have a bid come in at $2 million. But the point is, this isn't a Ford Taurus Limited where I know it's supposed to cost between $50,000 and $55,000. There's no benchmark for me to go by to know what this should cost. We can sit and say something should be costly, and that could be $500,000 or that could be $17 million. That's very subjective terminology. So for me, I would need more information before I could support actually going with this particular company. And I want to reiterate, I don't think anyone's done anything wrong. The company that provided the bid, Southern Standard Construction, we have actually awarded a contract to them on a roofing job, so I have nothing against the company. The facts that are before me, I don't feel that I have enough information to make a solid judgment.
You had 5 people that chose not to bid. And why they did that, I can't answer. I will say, if you put it back on the street, I want you to understand as a board, steel right now in construction is 30 to 40% higher. Right now you have somebody locked. So if we throw it out, which I'll be more than happy to do, I'll be more than happy to get a hold of people and make the phone calls again and get them all back down here. You have a risk of changing your price. Right now you have a man locked. So like I said to you on the phone today, I've got a job that went up $2 million in steel alone on an $8 million job in the last 12 days. So we're in a very weird world. I can't explain why they didn't bid, but I I have no problem standing in front of you saying that the company they're using to put in your building is the same man that the sheriff's department went 2 years ago. He just doesn't bond. He's never bonded in the 20 years I've known him. He's working for me right now in 2 facilities. It's a very quality company, but I've had to put him with a general contractor to get the work done because of the way he is. It's just, he's an older gentleman who's slowly going to retire. So I know, be more than happy to put it back out. That's up to you guys, whatever y'all want to do.
In lieu of putting it back out to bond, I think what Commissioner Chance is after, and I'm kind of the same thought, I like benchmark information. In lieu of putting it back out to bond, is there, since this is a prevalent construction that is going on in these type of jails, is there any way to benchmark this cost against other recent such endeavors, so as to say, in a so many story building or so many square foot of this type construction, quantify it, whatever, it's typically, $92 to $105 per square foot to do this, and they're coming in at 95, so we're okay. I mean, is there some way to get
Yeah, I can
quantifying?
absolutely do that for you. I could take some historical data that we're currently doing one right now and see what it is, because he has 18 housing units. He's doing all 18. Right now, I turned it to where I didn't. Normally, we'll reach out. After we do this, we'll reach out to the sheriff's department and say, do you want to help get the metal in the building with inmate labor to cut some costs and to cut some things? I've not gone there yet because I didn't have the authority to talk to them. But I can call Norman, I can call Desi, I can call other people and really get you some rough magnitude of where we're at.
But to be clear, from the seat I'm sitting in, it's one thing to go back to the company at 1.4 million and say, if we cut this and we cut this, I can bring it down to 1.2. That still gives me no benchmark
I
data
understand that. It's
of saying, should have it originally started at 1 and should we gone down to 800,000? So that's where I'm going with this. I have nothing else to compare the original number to.
That's not what I said, Mr. Chance. What I'm saying is there's ways to work it later in life. What I can go to now is Norman Security, Poly Jail, and pull the last 2 data of things that we currently have done. His box is a little bit different. Every one of them a little different, but I can get you close enough to say that's what we've been paying. So we can, however y'all want to do it. I'm here to help you. So I'll do it however you want to do it.
Well, I'm hoping you'll use your expertise to help us. That's what we're asking.
Yep. I'll be more than happy.
I can't speak to what you're asking right this second, but I do want to make sure y'all got all the information that you need, okay? We've recently went back to full operations. We were fortunate enough early on with the help of our judges, DAs, public defenders, local attorneys, to get our numbers of inmates down to where I've never seen them in 26 years. We got down to 290. We've been slowly climbing up because once you have a lot of recidivism and some of these people, they just can't be on the street. They had to be somewhere. We got back up to around low 300s, 400. 3 weeks ago, we went back to normal operations, and we were at 510. We're at 510 today. With that being in mind, I'm just, everything that you're concerned about, the concerns, the what-ifs of liability I had in 2000, it's all come to fruition. You know, we were worried back in 17, all right, we've had these inmates jump, so sooner or later we're gonna get an officer thrown over. Well, we've had that happen. We've had other inmates attempt to jump. It's gonna happen one day where the cost that we're looking at to do this, and I do understand y'all need more information. I just wanna make sure y'all understand where we're coming from, that that cost could be very minute compared to what we may be looking at from a liability standpoint, due to our constitutional law or the constitutional oath of the sheriff by the governor to protect these inmates.
With your,
I do have some additional, I know if you look at these mezzanine canes, I don't know if y'all want to see any of this, it wasn't in the biz, but just so you have an idea of what we're talking about, maybe it might help you justify some of these numbers.
For me, there's no question that it's needed. There's no question it's going to be expensive. So there's nothing more that's going to say, hey, do we need this? I know you need it. I know you need it quick, but that doesn't negate my responsibility of how I see my job. So to your point, Captain Taylor, there's nothing I'm questioning from your standpoint that it's needed and it's needed quickly, and that it's going to be a tedious job and it's going to be expensive. But that is a subjective, that's a subjective, situation. I have nothing to base that on, or what should that number be reasonably, that we should be approving.
No, we feel all of y'all's support we have over the years, and we do appreciate it. I'm not trying to come at you with that. I just want to make sure, because ultimately y'all are responsible for the county, and even though the sheriff is an elected official, ultimately we get our funds from y'all, and we don't get sued separately. When we get sued, that money comes from the same spot. So I just want to make sure I'm giving y'all all the information and how concerned I am. So
Yes, sir.
that's, I have no problem with anything that y'all do on y'all's end. I'm just throwing it out.
I will call the other two vendors between now and Tuesday night and get some rough impact costs for you guys, just so you have a better understanding of what it could have been or should have been, to be able to present those to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I can't change what people do. We make things mandatory because this is not normal what we're fixing to go do. So I wouldn't want somebody in a building that I didn't feel comfortable with, which I was happy to see Cornerstone. I would do a lot of work with Cornerstone.
with your expertise, if you can quickly, and to Captain Taylor's point, we don't want to delay this, but at the same time, if we can get some fairly quick benchmarks so that we know how reasonable this bid is. I'm just going on one other thing I noticed in just the agenda that's laid out here. Although we used Southern Standard for a roofing job recently, they did happen to come in the magistrate court building. We went with a $245,000 bid. They came in at $377,000. So,
they're two different things, though. The question you should be asking yourself, and I'll ask it when I get permission to ask it, is Southern Standard being there surprises me. Okay, they're not a detention company.
Right.
So when they collected Desi's card, that doesn't surprise me. So the question is Desi's number versus the markup number for Southern Standard. Mm-hmm. Now, he has a bonding rate. He's going to have nothing to do with it other than oversee it from a supervision standpoint, because that's what the RFP says he has to do. Mm-hmm. His responsibility will fall on that person. So my curiosity is Desi's number. My curiosity's number is what Polly Gell's number would have been. And my other one is Cornerstone and Norman. Those are the people that actually do it every day, are those four vendors. So when I saw Cornerstone, I was comfortable. Now, I know why Norman doesn't drive from San Antonio, Texas to Georgia unless they have a big job. So this is not a big job to them, even though it's $1 billion. So it's not a big job to them for what they do. Cornerstone, it's a good job for them. So I'll be more than happy to do that between now and Tuesday, sir.
And it's good to know that you understand, if we do end up approving this Tuesday, it's very good to know that you believe the person actually doing the work is reputable, and they'll do a good job. So all those things, we're really close. All these things are sounding great.
You just have one number on the board, so you have a hard time looking at it.
It just comes down to that, and that's all I'm asking.
And I get you, sir. And so I will do everything I can between now and then to help you.
Okay, so
Put your mind at ease.
I'm not going to put this on a consent agenda. So David's going to call the other vendors and get a little more information for us on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we're moving into the business session. Typically, we do not discuss appointments at a work session. However, considering we may like to add these items to a consent agenda, at this time, we need to do a little bit of discussion. So 11.1 is the Western Area Regional Radio System Authority, better off known as WARS. A consideration of an appointment to the Western Regional System. I reached out to our Tim Pageant, who runs this with pretty much with EMA, and he recommended that we appoint Matt Klotfelter to serve on this authority. Does anyone else have any nominations, or are you good with this one?
I feel like since our chief, that's very knowledgeable and been with the county for many years, is recommended, then I would trust that that's a good appointment.
Great.
From, as far as the individual's credentials.
We good with consent for this one?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, 11.2 is an appointment to the Community Development Appeals Board. Well, we don't have Montreal or Tommy here, so I will just wait till on Tuesday for that one. (11.3) Appointments to the Planning and Zoning. There again, I don't have Montreal or Tommy, so we will just move on that one to Tuesday night too. Okay, 11.4. I believe, Christie, we are going to be waiting for the city of Carrollton to vote on this Monday night, so this will definitely wait till Tuesday. What happened, we had approved this last month, but two of the city council's nominees, one has declined and one is moving, so we've got to go through the process again. So nothing has changed on our end. All right, now we are on to 11.5, short-term rentals, resolution, and ordinance. And I'm going to call on Janet Hyde, or actually Avery Jackson.
Chairman and Commissioners, we have for your consideration a resolution to regulate short-term rentals such as Airbnbs or VRBOs and those type of rentals in the county. We've had, of course, those rentals are already going on in the county, and we've had complaints from some citizens that the guests at such places are using them for parties on the weekends and stuff, and they're disturbing the peace and quiet of some of the neighborhoods in the counties. Carroll County is not the only county or city experiencing that type of disturbance from those short-term rentals. It's happening all over the state of Georgia, and numerous municipalities and counties are developing different types of ordinances to combat those types of disturbances. And we've looked at various ones, and again, this has just been developing over the last couple of years, and the state of Georgia has even looked at some regulations, and we've looked at a lot of the major counties and municipalities that have enacted these. We've talked to some of their planning departments as to best practices, and we developed a proposed ordinance for your consideration. Basically, it's a licensing requirement that short-term rentals will have to come to the community development department and get a license just like you would a business license. And it also has some other regulations, such as to the number of occupants that can be in there based on the number of bedrooms, parking, the number of cars you can have there, where you can park those cars. And it requires that the fire marshal come out and inspect it to make sure everything is up to code. And it does have a provision that if the guests at the short-term rental violate the county's ordinances, such as noise ordinances or other ordinances, or the short-term rental ordinance, 3 times, then they'll get their license pulled for a 12-month period at that time. Of course, there's fines also associated with that, so they'd be paying fines over time as well. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to let me know.
Well, I have a question. One of these is in the 4th district, and they've had problems in the past with people firing a rifle off the back deck and out of the backyard across the lake, and they've actually called the sheriff's department to come out there and do something about it, but we didn't have anything in place that would allow them to arrest the people and get them off the premises. Well, is this going to allow, if we run into something like that they can haul these people off?
There's nothing in this ordinance that would prevent somebody from shooting a firearm. However, depending on what time of day they're shooting that, and if they're not shooting it in a safe manner, then those would certainly be violations of our ordinances, either for nuisance, noise, or endangerment of other people. And yes, if they did violate those ordinances, then they could have their license pulled and fined for the actual ordinance violations that they're are violating, or for violating the short-term rental ordinance as well.
Okay.
Are there grandfathered provisions in this, or are we requiring everybody that does this to get the permit and pay the fee? And
Everybody that rents a short-term rental in Carroll County would now be required to come get a license to continue to do the short-term rental. So there'd be
Okay.
no grandfathering in under this.
Okay, I mean, I'm, on the one hand, I'm, against government regulation and minimizing that as much as possible, as, from my comments about running home-operated businesses. But on this, I mean, I do think, like Steve has mentioned, we need to look out for the residents that are actually tax-paying residents of the county versus those who come in for 2-3 days and raise a ruckus and disturb the peace and that kind of thing of the rural community. So I think it's a good thing and time that we enacted this, because I've had some calls about complaints of the same type of thing, especially from a noise factor. So the fee amount, Avery, how did we arrive at the 200? I mean, is that a reasonable amount? Should it be more? Is that gonna, is that going to, I guess where I'm coming from is to do this, to process this paperwork, to go after violators and that kind of thing. It would be nice to have revenue come in sufficiently so that other taxpayers who aren't renting out their house in a short-term manner aren't supplanting the activity to regulate this. So I didn't know if $200, how we arrived at that, and if that was appropriate.
We looked at what some of the other counties and cities were doing, and then the Community Development Department looked at what kind of staffing and things that they would have to do, and came up with that number, thought it was a fair and reasonable number where it's not trying to gouge the citizens or anything, but it is paying for the additional manpower that will be required to process the applications and possibly send codes officers out there as well.
Okay.
I had a couple of individuals contact me that said they just wanted to make sure it wasn't overly restrictive. They weren't necessarily against it, and I don't have too much to base it off of. I'm not in that world, but like you said, looking up some other counties and so forth, to me it does not look over restrictive, and I think it's only within reason if people move into a community or buy a home under a certain zoning, and all of a sudden that facility becomes, or house becomes, more like a facility where new people are coming in possibly every single week, and all the things that go along with vacationing. I think it's only reasonable that we have to have something in place to set some expectations. So I'm no expert in this by any measure, but what I've read, I think you all did a good job, and I do not think it's overburdensome, but I think there's some provisions in there to look out for our community and for safety as well.
One more question. It's mentioned here about the fines be punished as provided by section 1-13. What are those fines?
That's our general fine section for the maximum fines for any violations of our county ordinances, and that's set by state law as well, and it's up to $1,000 and a couple of months in jail, but we don't typically throw people in jail. We're more after compliance.
Yeah, okay. And as far as light pollution, I guess you would call it, is that covered somewhere in these ordinances, or?
It is not, and we do not have an ordinance on light pollution. That could be a nuisance. It could be a violation of our nuisance ordinance if you are receiving a certain amount of light pollution at certain times of day or something, then you could make out a case for light pollution, but we don't specifically mention light pollution in this ordinance or in our code of ordinances.
Okay, but still that could be something that the person holding the permit could be cited for.
If somebody's shining a spotlight in your house at the middle of the night and you can't sleep or anything, then that would certainly constitute a nuisance in my book, and I feel like if we cited them for that, I think one of the judges would feel the same way.
Okay.
If you don't have any further questions, 11.5, short-term rentals, are we in agreement to put it on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have 11.6, a resolution about Carl Jordan Place abandonment. I'm going to call on Charles Pope again. Now, this will not go on the consent agenda because we do have to have a public hearing. Or would you just rather wait and present this on Tuesday? I mean,
Yeah, the Carl Jordan Place off of 61, it's owned by Jeff Matthews, and he was just wanting to close that little section, or wanting the county to abandon it, give it back to him so he could have, I think it's a little over 100 acres as one piece then, so. As Public Works, we're in favor of it.
okay, great. So that will not go on the consent agenda. Thank you, Charles. 11.7 is again a public hearing. It's a resolution about the comprehensive plan amendment. There was an attachment from the Planning Commission synopsis, and basically this is where we would like to add the broadband component, because the Development of Community Affairs in the state says it'll help benefit our local providers, but that broadband initiative has to be written into our comprehensive plan. So this is pretty much when Carroll EMC, Tim Martin, Jay Gill, and Kyle came from Sync Global and explained this to us. So this is really just a formality, but it will also be on Tuesday, and we will have a public hearing. 11.8, let me go back to that one right quick. All right, that is the actual ordinance. We can put this on a consent agenda, and it's just some definitions, explaining what a broadband-ready community is. And there again, in order for our local providers to initiate some do some broadband initiatives, we need to put this into our comprehensive plan.
Is that something that our attorneys have viewed and feel comfortable with?
Yes, I've been working with Janet Hyde and Ben Skipper, and the proposed ordinance is the DCA form, and to be certified as a broadband-ready community, we can make absolutely no changes to the form other than to put the point of contact, and that will be Mr. Skipper. So we have reviewed that form and worked with Janet on the changes to the comprehensive plan, which will be considered Tuesday night.
That would be up to my colleagues if they're in agreement, but considering the staff, I've read the document and legal counsel has reviewed it, I would not have a problem moving forward with consent.
Okay, so 11.8, broadband-ready community ordinance. Agreed to put that on consent agenda.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to review, just to make sure we have our checklist here of what's going to be going on Tuesday night. Flip back to the beginning of So Tuesday, we'll have our regular call to order, the roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, approval of the agenda, approval of minutes. We'll have our public comments. We plan to have 3 special presentations. Then we will move into the zoning session, which we have 7 of those. And then at that point, we'll have a consent agenda of 7 items. That will be the Carroll County bonds, 10.2. 10.4 is the Magistrate Court Building roof and HVAC renovations. 10.5, Public Works, the asphalt spreader. 10.6, the Ag Center electrical work. 11.1, appointment of the Western Regional Radio System Authority, WARS. 11.5, the short-term rentals resolution ordinance. And 11.8, broadband-ready community ordinance. What we will still have to discuss and do will be, number 1, the Carroll County Jail interior barrier system renovations, appointments to the Community Development Appeals Board, appointments to the Planning and Zoning, and nominees for the Carroll County Hospital Authority, along with the actual bond resolution that will have the final copy. We'll also have the 2 public hearings for Carl Jordan Place and the comprehensive plan amendment. Does that read well with your notes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At this point, I will adjourn the meeting.